So I want to start with a real simple statement that I don't need to tell anyone in this room. And what I love about presenting at Real College is I got to take out a lot of my really basic slides that talk about what student hunger is and attempt to justify to you why it's a real issue. Typically, I start my talks, here's a really great line for any of you who get pushback about the issue of student hunger. I always start my talks by saying, you know, when I say college students are going hungry, I'm often met with a lot of skeptics, maybe even some of you in this room, who think if a student got to college, how can they be hungry? And then you can rattle off a bunch of facts, from the fact that we have from K through 12 free breakfast and lunch. What do we think happens? Their loans are feeding them? It should make sense that we have hungry college students, right? So taking out most of those slides and kind of diving into what we actually do. So we partner with universities. What that means is we have 3 staff. You can see their beautiful faces here, Marissa and Maddie, who are in our audience. They can raise their hands. And yet, you'll see on this slide, that we are on 50 campuses across the country. That is because when one of these campuses calls us and says, we love Swipe Out Hunger, we want a program on our campus, can you send a rep out? We say, congratulations, you're the new rep, this is how it's gonna happen. And we give you the game plan because you know your campus far better than we could, and you know how to play the politics, you know what resources are available, and that's what we started with. Swipe Out Hunger was founded on the idea that the most innovative practices that are going to help us address the problems we face are going to be solved by the resources and the people already engaged in that system. When we started, it was based off the idea, myself being a student at UCLA, go Bruins, that had extra money on my meal plan, a group of friends and I, who decided to simply go in the dining hall, buy food, and bring it out to people in our community who are hungry. You can imagine that UCLA was not the biggest fan of this, dozens of students going in and out of the dining hall. But because we kept pushing back, we went back with a formal proposal and asked them to partner with us. And we were able to develop this model, where now students who had, is everyone familiar with the meal plan model? Buy a meal plan, if you don't use the money, it's non-refundable. So we gave students another option to be able to donate their meal swipes. And the thing I love about this is that it involves the entire campus. It involves that freshman whose parents bought her the biggest meal plan. It involves the frat bro who, instead of swiping his friends into the dining hall, is choosing to donate. And it destigmatizes the entire process in one way. People are picking up and donating at the same spot. Not really, but they're learning about the program and donating at the same spot. So this simple model has been able to grow. If you're curious as to how it actually looks, we have one case study here, and we also have dozens of other case studies. This is our program at UC Merced, and the reason why I love their program is because you can see on the second bullet point, students can request meals if they're running low through logging into their CatCard mobile ID or iCare web app. So students can simply sign into their existing portal, technologically identify they need help, and the money is transferred. This is so effective because their dining services staff is in regular weekly communication with their social services team. We hosted a webinar with the man who runs this essentially, and he taught all of his other colleagues how they're able to set this up. So these are some of the things that Swipe Out Hunger does. I wanted to also highlight a community college example. This is Santa Monica Community College, also based in Los Angeles, where, as you know, community colleges don't have meal plans. And so instead, a group of students within student government created the Flavor Program, which is funded through, originally, student fees. They said, if the campus isn't going to take care of us, we're going to pass a referendum, take a portion of our student fees, and set up this $5 voucher. And we're going to get every retailer on campus, the Subways, Rubio's, to accept this voucher in exchange for a square meal. It's a $5, $6 voucher, and it was incredibly successful to the point where now the school has adopted it as their own, and it's funded through a beautiful marketing campaign that takes a portion of administrators and staff and faculties, if you opt in. It's like a payroll deduction that helps fund this, and they fundraise charitably, philanthropically as well. And if you're in a community with a farmer's market, another amazing thing that they do is a farmer's market not too far away. where they take the extra produce, bring it on campus, and just hand it out. It's like hundreds of students come and get free bags of produce that would have otherwise been thrown away, because if you're not familiar with the economics of farmers markets, those farmers, especially in California, might drive a couple hours to get to that farmer's market, and anything they drive back is not gonna last. So this is a beautiful local partnership you can set up. As very similarly, I wanna take a moment to highlight Kathleen. The examples that were shared were community-driven things. We think that once there's infrastructure, once there's a point person that's talking about resources that are available, community members who have resources are going to contact you and want to work with you. The challenge is, of course, having a full-time staff person, having a space, having marketing to get the word out, right? We also go beyond meal swipes, as we like to say. We work on legislation, we work to fight stigma, program evaluation. I'm gonna come back to these points. We design reports that advise on opportunities and gaps for our partners, strengthen SNAP outreach, and we offer an online resource and community hub where all the practitioners are able to come together, learn best practices, and talk to one another. I shared about our update, our impact so far. We're in 23 states, all of this led by 3 staff. And I wanted to share some of our impact. So this, our staff doesn't know that I'm even doing this, but we're gonna go for it. I'll say Maddie and Marissa spent this summer conducting our first ever program evaluation. We had over 800 students respond and tell us what the impact of meal vouchers were for them. I'll say this was not a controlled group controlled, I don't even know how to say it, the control study group. I am not a data person. Everyone else who's been on the stage says that they were, but fortunately Marissa loves data. And so I'm very grateful that we prioritize this with their leadership this year to be able to learn, like, what are students gaining from this? And what I've done in this presentation, again, because this isn't a controlled study group, is focus more so on the stories, but also include the percentages of how this helps students. This is my favorite quote from this study. We had over, again, 800 students voluntarily respond to this. And one student said, "I have become more resilient to stressful situations now that I'm eating regularly." The stressful situations don't go away, but you are able to deal with them if you have your basic needs met. These were the people who responded. I hope you can see these. 48% of the, and you can see 800 students from both private and public 4-year schools. This is just this past spring, all of these numbers were collected. 48% are first generation, 9% lack stable housing, 59% of who we serve receive free or reduced lunch while in K through 12, and 51% said that they've taken food from club meetings before. The impact, so we've broken down the impact into 3 categories: academic success, health, and inclusion. I'll come back to these points in a moment. Health and nutrition. By receiving free dining hall passes, I have been able to nourish my body as needed instead of skipping meals or resorting to having a ramen diet. So someone mentioned ramen noodles are great. I agree. They're delicious. I have not had them in a long time because I'm committed to my health. And I want us to give students the option, if they don't want to have ramen noodles, that shouldn't be what we offer them. We should also have whatever else they find delicious and nourishing, right? It's not just about ramen. The stat that we pulled, there were a number that were like shocking of students who said, over half of the students we served, of these 800 students, said after getting meal vouchers, they stopped losing weight. They were losing weight before, or they were afraid. Over half of students said they stopped having the fear of running out of food. One of the things that we saw across our campus is 15% of our campus partners reported having unredeemed meal swipes by the end of the semester, which there are a number of reasons why you can imagine. Stigma, not knowing dining hall hours, not wanting to sit alone. But the idea that they also don't know when there might be a rainier day, a harder day, and they want to save those meal vouchers. And I know Kathleen and I talked about this at Bunker Hill, is a reality, right? So even the mental space to be able to feel this source of abundance. Inclusivity. This program made me feel like the college really cares about me beyond academics. Another student who said, they helped me build a community of support. I had regular dining partners, and that strengthened our relationship. Going into the dining hall, if you've been in a dining hall in the past 5 years, raise your hand. If you are ever in Los Angeles and did not raise your hand, please let me know so I can take you into UCLA's dining hall, because it is incredible. It is the greatest restaurant you've ever seen. And to not have that opportunity to be in community, to have this amazing abundance of food, is a shame. Because if we are trying to end student hunger and there's a student who's walking past an incredible restaurant and is starving, it just doesn't make sense to me. It makes no math sense, no data sense. And so why aren't we thinking about the resources we have on campus more seriously when we're having these conversations, or at least involving the people who are really good at feeding people in our conversations to teach us? Why isn't dining services an advisor for every pantry, even if they don't want to open up their dining halls? It's a simple bringing people together that I think is missing and helping us move faster to learn the lessons we need to learn. I'll note that the stat on here is that 79% of respondents agree that meal swipes have made them feel like the campus environment is inclusive and supportive of students like them, which I love that you touched on that when you walk on, we want every student as they walk on campus to feel like that space was built for them. As a first-gen student, I came from a family who didn't know what the SAT was, right? So many things you have to navigate on your own. Nevertheless, the moment you come onto campus and have to navigate a whole new scene. And then finally, the impact on academic success, which, do we think feeding people is going to help them do better in school? Probably. This is some of the feedback we got from our students. I got my first Dean's Honor List because I was able to have my nutritional needs met. Simple things like I will stay at school longer because I can eat there and I'm not distracted by being hungry in class. So simple, right? Students who are able to go to study group because that happens at the end of the day. Students who don't have to go to bed earlier because later they stayed up, the more hungry they became. 64% of respondents agree that meal swipes helped them stay in school. 52% of respondents agree that meal swipes helped improve their grades. Before I go to next steps, I wanted to talk about why we broke down these sections into academic success, inclusion, and health. One of the key things that we learned is that the word intersection was used yesterday. And the intersection of meal vouchers on a student's life are not just their physical health, it's not just food, right? It's how it impacts their academics, how they feel on campus. But what happens, there's a session later today happening on design thinking. What happens when we create a meal voucher program and we don't think about how that intersects with that student's social life? Because if we're just creating the meal voucher and we're not thinking about what it looks like for that student to wait in line to pick it up, or to have to explain themselves to the person at the register whenever they hand something new, or when that person's like, oh, what does that code mean? That's us not thinking about how to design things with students at the forefront. Who is this for? So when you think about the meal voucher, how is that going to intersect with that student's entire campus experience? And typically we say, wow, food helps students in so many ways. So let's make sure when we start a voucher program, we're gonna also build communities and build plans. And let's think about the reverse as well, the negative impacts of creating something new without considering the ways it might negatively impact a student's life. One of the ways, the single most best way to do this is by involving a student in the process. The benefits of having a student involved is that, I'll say, you get immediate feedback. They're gonna go tell their friends about this resource, and then, oh wow, we're at 1, our session ends at 1:45, right? 2:15. Oh, great, okay. Okay, great. Two great things happen when you involve, many great things happen when you involve students. One is we're idealistic and we don't know the bureaucracy, so we state things, and I would say I'm 26, I'm not a student anymore, but spending a lot of time with students has taught me, as you heard from Mary Pat and Lillian yesterday, to be very impatient sometimes when you're trying to ask for something you believe in. And so students will push for something bigger than you even imagined. They'll also tell their friends about it, and they'll give you immediate feedback. I encourage you to go to swipehunger.org/start, or just our website, if you, one, have a program We want to learn about it, we want to document it, we want to add you to our network so we can get better at supporting schools like yours. Or if you're interested in starting a program or learning how to, go to our site and let's talk. Marissa and Maddie will get you started ASAP. And these are some key people who should be in the room: dining services, supportive services, dean of student life, and a student. And before we wrap, I want to touch on the stigma that comes with asking for help. A student responded to us on our new campaign, Overlooked on Campus, and said, when I spend money on food, I end up feeling guilty rather than proud about providing my body what it needs. The way that we, I don't even know how to unpack this, but it goes back to a really broken narrative we have around our students feeling like resources are scarce. And the more we're able to talk about these things with one another, the more we can dispel that myth. So we started this campaign on Instagram called Overlooked on Campus, where students across the country can scroll through and see stories just like theirs. You know, the overheard in LA, overheard in New York, funny things you might overhear in a city. This is what's overlooked. It's real experiences that we don't hear about. So if you go to Overlooked on Campus, you can encourage your students to submit their stories so that they can have theirs anonymously shared. And they can also see other folks as they're just casually scrolling, and that social isolation piece is a bit disrupted. Marissa and Maddie, we have a couple posters left over if anyone wants to take some to campus to post around. I also wanted, I'm feeling really hopeful. This is kind of like a dark, big room, and we're all kind of spread out, which I don't love. But still, I'm feeling so hopeful. This was just a couple months ago. Actually, Tim and I were at this session together. But a year before this hearing happened, I got a phone call from an administrator from UC Santa Barbara. Oh no, I apologize. A former administrator from UC Santa Barbara who was elected to our state assembly. And she said, you know, I'm really interested in the issue of college student hunger, and I love the work you all are doing. Can we take you onto every college in California? I'm like, that's a great idea, but we're not the only solution. She's like, well, if you were to write a bill, what would it say? And I kind of died. And then I sent her back a couple ideas. And within 3 months, this was able to be signed into law. And so to take a moment to tell you what the bill was, it was in an effort to address student hunger. And as you all know, California is really invested in addressing this issue. And so I called Ruben, who you all saw today, and then the CSU system, and then the community college system. And everyone was like, okay, if she's really serious about this, because we're all skeptical, let's put something together. And the entire system came together, gave notes. Nadia, like people in this room were able to like jump in and help develop a piece of legislation that led to $7.5 million for our state to support and fund basic needs and food programs on campus. And it's wild. And when I asked the assemblywoman why she called us and not one of the professors or administrators or anyone else, why a 26-year-old girl from the San Fernando Valley, she said, well, because you guys are not politicized. You're not affiliated with any system. You're just an outside nonprofit working on this. And I say that to say that this has to be a community effort. If you're a student who has an idea, like who knows, right? Our original model looked nothing like we are today. I've been doing this for 8 years. It's evolved significantly. But I do think it has to be a community effort. And I hope that we all continue to learn from and challenge and push each other to do better, because there is so much attention on this issue now. We've gotten press in everything. There's so much attention on this issue that we cannot afford for people to learn about this without simultaneously learning about the solutions and the people in action. And that is what happens when we're in communication. So here's a bit more of our contact info. If you have any questions, please reach out. If you have a program, please let us know about it. If you want to start a program, please let us know about it. And follow us on Instagram. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rachel. I still have to realize I'm no longer a student, because I got my spark as a student getting empowered and having mentorship and community engagement. And I think that's fundamentally where the change begins, is being uplifted and